Robin CP. Back at it! Hey! Queen's going crazy. Run it back, play it back, let's see. METS on my fitted, that scripture. Talk big stats, every bar like a picture. Line uploaded at every swing like a lecture. Talking 26 rings, that's the gesture. April in the air, blue and orange in my veins. Whole East on alert, feel the pressure in the frame. Bold talk, look at every segment, every show. We don't hedge on the call, we just say it, then it goes. Woo! Opening day, we here. 2020 shit's our year. Robin CP made it clear. Let's go, Mets, say a lot of my ear. Let's go! And all these ready, they fear. Every pitch, every bat so near. Orange way from the back to the tier. Let's go, Mets, 20 our year, yeah.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back. Opening day is upon us, and we cannot wait to get started. And we are back and better than ever. We are back together finally, as I said we would. Surprise. We are here, ready to go get started for the 2026 season. We got a new face that is putting on the blue and orange on opening day. Obviously, Carson Benge is making the roster. There is 2 roster spots open. It's looking like a bullpen and a bench spot, and that is what we're going to talk about during this whole season prediction, season preview show. But Chris, welcome back, and how you doing, buddy?
It is the week that Mets baseball is officially back, and I'm happy to be back here too, Rob. So I apologize for all the travel and stuff that I've been doing and not being present for the past couple of weeks. But we are back here officially as the season is set to kick off. Some very exciting news within the Mets community for this team, for this fan base, to get some excitement, some youth on the field in right field, and Carson Benge. That announcement officially happening per Carlos Mendoza just a couple of hours ago. I think we both released a short video on our channels before this lovely live stream right here for this Mets 2026 season preview. So I'm ready. I'm excited. Opening day. No tougher challenge really to go out there, especially if you're Carson Benge in game 1 of your career, than going up against none other than Paul Skeens. But I think these guys will be ready, and I think that there's a really big season on the horizon and a bounce back season for this Mets organization, a very new look organization from top to bottom. I'm excited.
Yeah, honestly, I think the excitement needs to be a little bit more amped up for a lot of Mets fans. I think people got over the fact of the core being gone and the new core in. And I think people are okay with it now. People are getting excited. People are seeing, what this rotation can be. This can see what the depth in the lineup that we will talk about when we get into our lineup predictions and all that fun stuff. But before we even get started to talking about the last guy on the bench, talking about possible bullpen arm and, everything else, the win totals, NL East, all that fun stuff, we do have to speak about the rotation. We're not doing rotation predictions because there's no need to, because we know what it is at this point, as Mendoza said. Are you a little shocked that David Peterson is starting in game 2 on Saturday against Pittsburgh? I know they want to split up the righties, but it was kind of a shock to me, having Nolan McLean going in game 3 of that series. Again, it's not the end of the world, but I was kind of shocked. I would just think they wanted to split up the righties, and that's probably the reason why. But what are your thoughts on that, considering what Mendoza's doing?
Yeah, I think that that's just it, Rob. I'm not going to look too deep into that as to why David Peterson is the 2 instead of Nolan McLean. We know what Nolan McLean is. We know what he's going to be for this rotation. I'm actually very excited. I'm very high on this rotation moving forward for a couple of reasons. One, you've got Freddie Peralta now, a much-needed ace, an anchor of this staff. When this staff last year fell apart, they didn't really have a guy like that, like Peralta can be for this team moving forward, until Nolan McLean walked through the doors. Now they have 2 of those guys potentially, and year 2, Nolan McLean making adjustments. Hitters are going to make adjustments to him, but I'm very confident in him to make adjustments back because his stuff is just that nasty. I mean, with the heater, 97, 98, we saw it in the World Baseball Classic, and also just that curveball that he has, the off speed in general that he has, is just absolutely filthy. So, and the other thing too is that, in going back to your question overall, like I said, I'm not going to make too big of a deal about it, but I like this rotation because, and I think you should too, Rob, is that you wanted a 5-man rotation, and a 5-man rotation is exactly what you're getting now. And the bad part about it is that Sean Manaea looked so bad in spring training. And I think he actually just gave up in the inner squad, the final inner squad of the spring training, a bomb Francisco Alvarez today. He's not even touching 90, maybe even barely 90. And so by process of elimination, he's the odd man out of the rotation. But that's a message, right? For me, at least, to Kodai Senga, who's going to be slotted in there in the number 5 spot. We finally, hopefully, get a fully healthy Kodai Senga to start the season on regular 5 days rest, because the Mets, over the first couple of years of his career, ever since he entered the league in that 2023 season, have been going to that 6-man and really doing everything in their power to give him what he wants and set him up for success. But now at this point of his career, they're like, we need you to fit into what we want. And I like that in what's going on in the decision-making from the top, and David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza setting that 5-man rotation as a precedent for Kodai Senga, and having Sean Manaea as the quote-unquote piggyback to some of these games. Now, I know Sean Manaea is probably not happy about it, and hopefully that lights a fire up underneath him to get back into the mix of that rotation, but this is absolutely the correct move, and I'm excited for it. So I think for multiple reasons, we have to be excited for this rotation. And it doesn't really matter if Nolan McLean's going in game 2 versus game 3. He's still going to be in the opening series. I'm not putting too much stock into that as it pertains to your original question.
Yeah, and what have we always talked about for a couple of years now? We talked about guys earning their jobs, earning those positions, earning those spots in the rotation, in the lineup, in the bullpen, right? I'm sick and tired of giving guys, spots that they don't deserve, regardless of what their name is. Obviously the big stars are going to get their regardless of what they do during spring training. But you know what? Sho Manaea doesn't deserve to be in this rotation. Kodai Senga, as much as I don't trust him, he deserves it. I said it, right? The only thing you can prove in spring training is that 1 year healthy and 2 year effective. And he was that. He was both of those things. So it's hard for me to say, oh, Kodai Senga doesn't deserve to be there. That's nuts. Not over Sean Manaea. And you know what? It's concerning about Sean Manaea, because do you really want a guy coming out of the bullpen going 88 miles an hour in cold weather? It's rough, but the Mets have no choice but to put him in the bullpen, make it $25 million a year. There's nowhere they can actually put him.
I'm just so curious because, I get it that it's spring training, and the same thing for Sean Manaea. We're going to turn around and talk about from the offensive standpoint with Mark Vientos, and there's a lot of people who are still taking the positive avenue of these two guys, saying it's spring training, even though we have a lot of sample size to go off of. My favorite 2 words is sample size when it comes to the extended look of spring training, and both of these guys had enough time to show us in spring training, especially during the latter stages of it, that they were ready for the regular season and at the top of their games. And now we have to worry about Sean Manaea, who was practically making excuses for why he wasn't touching 90 plus miles per hour, right? Let's not forget, and I think nobody forgets, unless you were living under a rock, that he chose, and the Mets chose, to let him forego surgery for those loose bodies that were plaguing him last season. He was set to have surgery, and that was what we all thought was going to happen when 2025 ended. And it turns out that, we got an announcement at some point this offseason that they said, nope, he's just going to go ahead, let it heal naturally. And now we're here. He's not even touching 90. Now he's saying that the adrenaline isn't there in spring training. Once he gets that adrenaline in the regular season, he's going to, that is the worst thing that you can try to sell this fan base on. This fan base is passionate. They're not dumb. And I think we're not dumb in calling this out. It's just a bad look. And it doesn't give me a really good feeling whatsoever, because like you said, velocity at the end of the day does matter. If a guy's losing 4 miles per hour differential in a season and a half, yeah, that's a big concern. So I don't know what to expect. He's been getting hit hard. And I don't really know. I don't really know what type of bounce back he's going to have. Now, can he go out there and, in his first couple of appearances, get back to 92, 93? It might be a stretch, but he could definitely do it. I'm not saying he's going to do it in his first appearance, but maybe appearance number 3, 4, 5, and get back to that way. And I guess he knows his body best, but it's just a very objective statement here saying that this is a concerning characteristic that we're seeing out of Sean Manaea this early. And we thought he was going to be a big part of this rotation. Now he's going to be that long man out of the bullpen, and we'll see what he does, Rob. But I just don't like the process of how this all played out. foregoing the surgery, and now we're sitting here making excuses about a lack of adrenaline. I just don't like it. It doesn't give me a good feeling.
Yeah, if I'm gonna, talk about other people, other players, making excuses for their bad performances, it's too hot, it's this, it's that. I don't want to hear it. Like, you're making $25 million a year and you decided not to have the surgery when loose body. It's not a major surgery. It's a minor surgery. It's microscopic. It's a simple surgery to remove loose bodies in the elbow. And for whatever reason, maybe he got nervous, scared. I don't know what it is, but that's clearly the effect of what's going on right now. There's no other reason unless he's hurt somewhere else, which we heard no signs of that. It's excuses at this point. And it's frustrating because it's like, this was a guy that was supposed to be at the top of our rotation last year and was supposed to be back at some point this year as a number 2 or number 3 at the very least. But it is what it is, and he has to prove himself. He's not happy, but you know what? We're trying to win. And you know what? Again, I kill David Stearns a lot, but I give him credit for not playing any games here, right? And by the way, he can't play games. This is his team now. So it's going to be his fault 100% if this team fails. 100%. This is his team now. He put this team together. He completely revamped this team to what he wanted. So if things go wrong, it's all on him. And somebody said in the chat, you can't blame Alonso anymore. Yeah, exactly. I brought it up the other day on my show in regards to who is to blame. Who are the leaders? Who are the faces of this franchise now? It is Lindor and it is Soto. This team fails, they will get the blame, at least from me. And that's the way it's going to go. So before we get into our predictions and what we think the bench is going to look like, or at least the one guy on the bench that is left and one more bullpen arm, let's remember, guys, is that no matter what happens this year, there could be fire-ins and there could be other guys on the hot seat. And as we talked about during the hot stove, even though this is a newly vamped roster, it can look a lot different next year with the possibility of opt-outs and free agents and all that fun stuff. But right now, it's the beginning of hope. It's the beginning of what we hope is going to happen with this team. This team is talented enough, Chris, and it's obvious, right? When we were making these signings, we were making some trades, still people were not as excited, but as we gotten closer and closer to opening day and we've seen, the talent of Carson Benge, we're seeing Peralta, Nolan McLean at the rotation and pitching, we're like, oh, this isn't so bad after all. And we look at the possibility of a lineup that can be so deep that this team probably hasn't had in years. It is exciting to be a Mets fan right now. And again, opening day brings excitement, of course, but at the end of the day, this team looks good on paper, and that's not the end all be all. But right now, we got through spring training mostly healthy, and that's something that usually doesn't happen. And that's a great sign for Kodai Senga. That's a great sign for anybody else that we had injury concerns about, even Francisco Alvarez, Chris. So any final thoughts before we get into our predictions?
No, like you said, I do think that this team is talented. We'll see what happens because like Explosive is saying right here in the chat, this is a half season by half season basis that we judge this team off of what we can before the season when we're giving these predictions on paper, right? If you told me that the Mets were losing Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Edwin Diaz, etc., I would have told you this roster is probably going to look like crap. And I like the way that David Stearns did pivot through the offseason to get all these guys in the doors. Yeah, a lot of these guys, we don't know what their future holds in Queens. Peralta's awaiting an extension. Bichette has the opt-outs, so on and so forth. Polanco's only on a 2-year deal. Williams is here for the short term, right? 3 years. So there's a lot of short-term happenings here, and this roster could still look different on paper next season. But I like going into this season, at least for the first half, going out there, replicating what the Mets did in the first half in 2025, because let's not forget that they were one of the top teams in baseball in the first half before that second half collapse, and then going out there and doing what it takes to get the proper talent. That's going to be the question. You're going to have the question. I will have the question, given how the deadlines have played out under David Stearns the past couple of seasons, but it's about getting off to a good start. That's really what it's about, especially for a team that we all know had clubhouse issues. How are these new guys going to gel together? And we're going to see that immediately. And it's good vibes right now, but how does this team respond when they go through a rough patch? Because there will be rough patches. How do you not let that snowball like these previous Mets teams have let snowball? And that is also on, you know, the leaders of this team, like you said, Lindor and Soto. All eyes will be on them, especially with what the New York Post was trying to push out in that narrative between the two, butting heads, kind of different styles of leadership, etc. This pretty much has to work, like you said, for David Stearns. Now, I'm not saying that Steve Cohen is going to make any rash decisions on Stearns, but now this is his team, right? This is his new look team. And so he's going to have to own it, basically, whether he succeeds or whether this team fails. So we'll see what happens. Let's get into some predictions.
Yep. And, we're going to start with the bench because that is one spot left on the bench that I think the name has already been brought up. There's only a couple of guys that are, Jared Young, Bruhan, and Roitvet, the catcher, is the three guys that are coming up north with the team. The Mets aren't going to make a decision until probably the day before opening day or the day of opening day as a final roster spot. And we won't know that. But Chris, we're going to start with you with the bench, and we do have the same bench, but it's just an idea of what you're looking at here and what your predictions are for the bench. So go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, Tyrone Taylor, I mean, he had actually a really good spring training with his bat. I was very impressed with Tyrone Taylor. Like, this decision and the decision of the front office, it had to have been very difficult because, like, Carson Benge, I did have some doubts about Carson Benge, not the player, because I'm like, this guy should be on the team with what he's doing in spring training, but in the mind of David Stearns, whether he was going to, let one of the veterans start off and bring Carson Benge up and, the whole service time manipulation. We've seen it in the past, but they're like, you know what? This kid's ready. We don't care about the service time. He's going to go out there and get the job until further notice. So I like that. And that has pushed Tyrone Taylor out of the equation. And that's been something we've all been waiting on. As good as Tyrone Taylor is with his glove, we know that his bat mostly is lacking. He is not a starting outfielder on a championship caliber team. And he is a fourth outfielder. And that's exactly what he is going to be acting as to start this season, barring any injuries. So Tyrone Taylor, obviously, he can play any position. We'll see what happens in center field, too, with Robert Jr., but I like that tandem there to start the season. Mark Vientos, man. Mark Vientos. We said all off season, Rob, that Beatty, Vientos, with the addition of Polanco and, the emergence of Bichette via free agency, there was going to have to be something that gives via trade. And the Mets didn't make the move. No. And this wasn't even early in the offseason. We were saying this even as late as January, early February, right before spring training started. And we're like, listen, if you guys like Brett Beatty, that's fine. He's coming off of a great season, the best of his career so far. Mark Vientos, we know he's coming off of a down year in 2025. We know what he produced in 2024 when he exploded onto the scene. We get it. But just from a roster construction standpoint, this really is not the best way to go about things. And they chose to ignore it. And they kept both of these guys, all of these guys in the infield. Now, I'm not saying that Mark Vientos is going to have another struggle-filled season because spring training doesn't have to be the defining factor of what we're going to get out of him in 2026, but it's not a good start. It is not a good start by any stretch of the imagination for a player that is positionless, essentially, until further notice if we ever see him this season at first base. Yeah, he looked good during drills, but what type of first baseman can we get out of him in game action, right? And, the power in spring training, lacking. I think he had a stretch of like 1 for, 30-something, 40-something. I don't know what it was, but it was bad across the World Baseball Classic and Mets spring training. And so that is the biggest question mark. As Sean Manaea is on the pitching side offensively, Mark Vientos is the biggest question mark. But because the Mets chose to forego the trade, now they're getting stuck with Mark Vientos here because they might still be exploring some late, trades to round out the offseason. Like I said, there's nothing really set in stone. It seems like they're really trying to, I guess, decide on that last bench spot. I don't think Mark Vientos is going anywhere. Who's going to want to take him for the price that the Mets want? So they're going to roll into the season with him. I think everybody knows that that's a foregone conclusion. And so we'll see what kind of contributions he makes. A lot of people are saying that he was going to be the Mets opening day DH. Well, Brett Beatty has essentially won that job. Either he's DHing or playing first base. His bat in spring training was undeniable. I'm really rooting for Mark Vientos, but I think that was a mistake on the Mets' part at this point, given what we've seen in spring training. Like I said, I don't want to let that define him because it shouldn't. He's still, I guess, young enough, but he's going to really have to bounce back with the bat. Torrens is going to be your backup catcher. I don't think the Mets are carrying 3 catchers. That's very self-explanatory. And then Brujan, I think that it is what it is. I mean, this is the 26th guy on the roster, basically, or 25th, however you want to call it. But he's a utility man. He's a veteran. He can play the outfield. He can play multiple infield spots. And I think that's what David Stearns values. And let's be honest, if Mike Tauchman didn't get hurt, that's probably Tauchman's spot, and they'd just carry 5 outfielders. That's what I think. I mean, maybe not, because Vientos, like I said, are you really counting him as an infielder on your bench? That's a little bit questionable, but I really do think Tauchman would have been on this team if he didn't go down with that meniscus tear. So a couple of other guys can be in the equation besides Brujan, but there's Jared Young that they're also kind of, sending up to New York to make that decision on. But I think Brujan is the guy, given the versatility. And it's just really one of those things where, are we really excited about this guy making the team? Probably not, but with the lack of other options, better options, that's what we're stuck with at this point until further notice. So maybe I'm rooting for a guy, one of the prospects to come up and take that spot eventually if they prove it in the minor leagues. Why am I blanking on his name?
Reimer.
Maybe a guy like AJ Ewing?
Yeah, that's what I was doing too. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a guy like AJ Ewing, right? Who looked pretty decent with the tools that he possesses in spring training when we saw him. And I'm like, if he figures it out early in the season, maybe in that midway point to 3/4 of the season, somewhere there, if they are really lacking that spark off the bench, they can make that call up. But this is what we have to work with. We know David Stearns loves the veterans, and Brujan's probably that guy, if I had to imagine, make that guess. So that's your 4, bench pieces. Is it otherworldly? No. Is it solid? Sure. I think Tyrone Taylor and Torrens excite me the most. Mark Vientos, is he a midseason trade at the deadline to improve the bullpen? Maybe. You can make that argument too. We'll see. Everything is up in the air based off of what the Mets do in the first half, and then you get to start cooking if you're David Stearns at the trade deadline to make your team better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you, and you're looking at my bench right now. It's the same thing, right? We both had the same idea. Obviously, I think Tauchman would have been in Brujan's spot. I think that's obvious. But again, how many times have we talked about it? I know, bad performances, injuries. Tyrone Taylor got shoved into the starting role multiple times over the last 2 years. He doesn't fit a starter role, especially with this team, and he's not really a starter on a good team. Let's be honest about that, or a contending team. His perfect position is a 4th outfielder. It's perfect. You can do so much with him. Defensive replacement late in games. If you need a little speed on the base paths late in games, you can throw him out there as well. Even though his bat is not great as a starter, he does have a little bit of a clutch gene since he's been a New York Met. And pinch hit appearances as well. So he has those 3 traits that are important for a 4th outfielder and a bench piece, which I love about Tyrone Taylor. And having him, Carson Benge did his job to make that team. You brought in Luis Robert Jr. and Soto's in left field. You put Tyrone Taylor in the best spot and the best position to help this team win going forward in 2026. Again, Mark Vientos. There's nothing to say. Like, he is the worst bench player that you can possibly have. Like, I thought, I would be crazy to think, I would have traded Mark Vientos for anything at this point and put Ronnie Mauricio on his bench, to be quite honest with you, because you can play him a lot more than you are Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos isn't playing third base over Bo Bichette. First base, he's the 3rd guy as a first baseman. It's Polanco and Beatty at first base, depending on who they might DH. Now, again, when there's a lefty in pitching that day against the Mets, maybe you'll see Mark Vientos be a DH. But I don't think you're going to mess around when you already have Bo Bichette, who, is learning third base, and you're going to have a guy in Mark Vientos who's a klutz at first base. I know Polanco isn't good, but he's a veteran who has a really good glove. I think I can figure out first base. And Brett Beatty has shown that he's done well at first base during spring. So I don't know what you're going to get from Mark Vientos at all, right? I don't think he's good enough to be a bench player. I don't think his mindset is what we have or what we need him to be coming off the bench. Now, obviously, the allure and the possibility of his power being a crucial factor on this bench. But does anybody have confidence in coming in the eighth inning with a man on trying to win a ball game or get the go-ahead run? I don't. And it's unfortunate because, he got the chance last year and he lost it. And we seen when, everybody was, you got Mauricio, Acuna, Beatty, and Vientos, when he wasn't getting the playing time, he was lost. And even with that playing time, I still don't trust him because he's not a good fielder any way you put him. So that is why, as we said, hopefully an AJ Ewan or a Jacob Reimer, show something over the first month of the season, because I don't think Mark Vientos has long. Again, he has no options. So that's why he's on this team. Again, he's the only one, in my opinion, that did not earn a spot on this team. He's only on this team because David Stearns always wants value from somebody, and he's not going to release Mark Vientos, as young and controllable as he is, and let him go elsewhere and possibly hurt us down the road, unless you're going to get something in return. So Mark Vientos, you know what? We all rooting for him, right? When he comes up to the plate and it's in a big spot, we're going to cheer him, right? Nobody's going to try to say, oh, hope he fails just to make myself right. Hell no. I'd rather be wrong 100% of the time, just like you, Chris, to make sure we win ball games. That's the idea here. And I don't know if Mark Vientos on the bench getting very little playing time is going to help this team win enough. Again, it might not be the end-all be-all, but I think Mark Vientos has a very short lease and maybe a month in April. Luis Torrens, the best backup catcher in baseball, in my opinion. I mean, there's nobody – like, if Alvarez gets hurt, we have no problem having Luis Torrens be the catcher. Now, we don't want that full-time, but you know what? It could be a lot worse. We've seen a lot of backup catches are terrible. At least Luis Torrens has a sense at the plate. He's not great, but he has a veteran mindset at the plate, right? He's not going to be a big home run guy, but if he needs a base hit, he'll take that. He'll take it between the first and second base hole. That's what he does. And we know how good he is defensively. Right now, he's the backup catcher. Alvarez is coming in healthy for the most part. Great. Perfect. Another spot where Luis Torrens is the perfect backup. And again, I think at times, just to get Alvarez off his feet late in games, I think Torrens is going to come in late in games just to spill a little bit of innings from Alvarez, because I think the Mets are going to do everything they can to keep Alvarez healthy. And again, Vidal Brujan, I mean, he's making a team because Tachman got hurt, in my opinion. Again, he's not bad, right? He's had a good spring. As you said, Chris, outfield, infield, he can play many positions. That is what Stearns loves about players like this. He likes the versatility. And, we talked about MJ Melendez, who was another one that had a really good spring that, I think he got sent down to the minors rather quickly. So he's a depth piece. And if Brujan doesn't work out, you would think Melendez is going to be the next man up before it's either like Reimer or Ewan, like we were talking about. So me and Chris have the same bench. We have the same idea when it comes to, why Brujan is here. What the hell, Vientos is still on this team. But he's here, and we're going to be rooting for him. So unfortunately, the bench could have looked a lot different with Brujan and Vientos not being here, and who could have actually took their place going forward. But right now, this is the bench. And again, we both agree. We think Vientos is going to be on his way out if he doesn't show anything. I think in a month, but maybe even at the trade deadline.
And I think it's a very important, before we move on, to I completely agree with you. Like, Mark Vientos if he is going to be on a team that I root for, like, I want it to be as a starter. Like, that's when I know he's at the top of his game. He is not made for the bench. I don't think that he'd be taking competitive at-bats off the bench in the 8th inning. he just seems like he's a guy that needs the game to develop for him to carry over and carry that momentum, because I just don't think his bat will be quick enough off the bench. Guys come in there cold, right? We saw it a little bit with Ronnie Mauricio, and then he kind of started to figure out the role just a little bit. But even still, it's just not enough sample size for these young guys to go out there and carry that confidence in those huge situations. But at the end of the day, if Mark Vientos doesn't perform, I would assume that Ronnie Mauricio is the next guy that the Mets call up to take his spot. And at that point, you got to wonder what happens with Mark Vientos, because David Stearns is going to have to make a decision at some point. He's out of options. I mean, are you just going to settle on the value that another team is willing to, give up for Vientos, or what? It's a strange situation. And I agree with you with Brujan. If that doesn't work out, Melendez is the first guy you call. Melendez has sneaky pop. I like his bat off the bench a lot, to be honest, right? I like his bat off the bench a lot. I think that he could be a very key piece for this team moving forward, even if he's not on the open day roster, which he's not going to be. And then after that, if you burn through, multiple options there, then you get into the conversation of Ewing, Reimer, etc., with the prospect talent coming up. But, bench could be better, could be worse. Bench guys for a reason. The starting lineup has to go ahead and provide. And I think that Torrens is probably the most important bench player given the Alvarez history of injuries. And I think that that's going to be a very key piece for this Mets team moving forward offensively, is Alvarez staying healthy, because I think that there's something special brewing with his bat if he's able to go ahead and stay on the field.
Yeah, and Mike brought it up in the chat about Ronnie Mauricio. Can play multiple positions, and we believe will have a good bat and has speed as well. The issue is the Mets want him to get at bats. They want him to develop more. Again, with the injury he had a couple of years ago, it kind of stunted his growth a little bit, and they want to get him at bats. So again, right now this is the bench. Again, like Chris said, it's not great, but it's more than doable to win ball games, right? If you're relying on your bench too much, that means there's a problem. That means there's a problem with the starting lineup, and that's what we're going to get to next. And, I'll start off with my lineup since Chris went first with the bench. So my lineup is different from Chris's. I show you that. But if it shows up. All right, there we go. So my lineup looks like this. Like Lindor leading off, Soto second, Bichette third, Polanco cleaning up. I put Simeon fifth just because I want to break up righty-lefty. Brett Beatty 6, Francisco Alvarez 7, Carson Benge 8. And I've talked about this many times. Luis Robert Jr. batting 9th. I love his speed, and I think this could change. I think if Luis Robert Jr. is showing the power that I think we can see from him, I think he'll jump up behind Polanco, to be quite honest with you. And I believe Chris has something similar to the something with Luis Robert Jr. that I just talked about. But this is what I would start with, only because I do like Carson Benge. I don't want to put no pressure on Carson Benge right now. Put him in the 8th spot. It's kind of in no man's land, but it's still a crucial role because Luis Robert Jr. is kind of your second leadoff hitter. And I think it's also important with that as well. So you got speed at the 8th and 9th spot in the lineup. Also Lindor, who I don't think is going to use too much speed early on. I think he's going to be careful, with the hand and all that fun stuff. But I like this lineup because it splits up the lefty righties for the most part. And it's kind of even. And we talked about this, Chris. No matter where you put these guys, there's a lot of guys that can hit 20-plus home runs in this lineup. And, I mean, you could see every one of these guys hitting 20 home runs. Obviously they got to have good seasons, but most of these guys can hit 20-plus home runs. And that is something that we did not even talk about last year. We talked about last year with a lineup that was so top-heavy that if they didn't do the job, the bottom of the order was going to be in trouble. And it ended up being the case. Right now, no matter what position you put most of these guys in, it's so much deeper. And I think it's going to be hard to get through a lineup like this. Now, obviously, Simeon has to bounce back. Luis Robert has to wake up. Things have to happen. Alvarez has got to bounce back. But Bichette, Soto, Lindor, Polanco, and honestly, Brett Beatty, I think are all going to be fine. I think they're going to do what they're supposed to do. Guys like Carson Benge, we don't know what he's going to do at the big league level. We have to wait and see. Again, Robert Jr. is still a question mark. Alvarez is a question mark. And Simeon is a question mark, but I think these guys are new, change of scenery. Some of them, healthy. I think it's a huge difference what we're seeing in this lineup. And I think that's why people are getting more excited. At least me and Chris are getting excited because, again, when you see our win totals, you'll see why we're excited. The lineup is so much better than last year. Plus, you have a better rotation at the top. Huge difference. And I think it's going to make a tremendous difference in low-scoring games, close games, something that we lost a lot last year. We couldn't win low-scoring games to save our lives. It can change this year. And I think close games, the lineup is just too dangerous all around. It's more even. And again, it's not about, where's all the massive power? You don't have to fall in love with the power. Too many people fall in love with the power and think it's the end all be all. We won 83 games last year by hitting a ton of home runs, and it did not matter at all. So there's other aspects to the game that people just forget and just fall in love with the power. But when how are you going to replace that power? With more guys in the lineup hitting 20 home runs. Huge difference, Chris. And, this is my lineup. What do you think about my lineup right
now? I don't think I have that much faith in Marcus Semien, to be honest. And that's reflective of my lineup. That would be the only complaint that I would have about that. Because I think top 3 are solidified. Top 4 are solidified. Brett Beatty has the ability to also, I know that lefty there, he can move into that 5th spot behind Polanco. But yeah, there's a lot of options. I just don't know if I'd put Semien in that 5 spot because I know he showed some power a little bit in spring training here and there. He has the ability. I just don't know if his bat is quick enough at this point of his career based off what we saw last year. But we'll see. Of course, we'll see. That's the only complaint. Everything else looks good to me.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Like I said, I question about Marcus Semien 5th. The only reason, again, I wanted to split up the lefties. I know that's not a big thing for a lot of fans, but again, if you ever listen to Carlos Mendoza, he's obsessed with matchups. And that's why I put it there. Again, I don't like Semien in the 5th spot, but I think that was the only way to mix it up because I don't trust Alvarez just yet, putting them in the 5th hole yet. I mean, I know some people could have put Carson Benge, some would have put Beatty, even though you're not worried about matchup. It's just a consideration. Again, I think this will change within like 2 weeks. If somebody else at the bottom of the order is hitting well, I think it can flip. You can see Semien at the bottom of the lineup. All right, Chris. So here's your lineup, and you can talk about it right here.
Yeah, so I like you said, I mean, that 5th spot is up for grabs. I could see why you said Semien there because the matchups, the veteran presence of his bat. But I went with the power aspect of what Robert Jr. has shown before. Now, we have to see it, and that's very clear to start off the season. But I think that if you are going off of the best, probably pure hitters of this lineup at the top of everybody's game, that's my top 5 right there. You'll have, righty, lefty, righty, and your 3, 4, 5. And then you're cooking. Like if Robert Jr. can put 25 plus baseballs over the fence and be that true gap-to-gap hitter that he once was in the Chicago White Sox uniform, that would be huge. And that's also with Brett Beatty, a guy that just absolutely destroyed the baseball in spring training coming off of one of his best seasons, batting right behind him too. That's a really solid top 6. Marcus Semien, right there in your 7th spot. Like I said, I think he's going to be bottom 3rd of the order. He has some pop still. How much? We don't really know. I'm not really confident in his abilities at this point of his career. He's solid. We know that he's here more so for his clubhouse presence and that elite defense that he possesses. Hopefully he can provide something in the bottom 3rd of this order, but let's also not, be mistaken about it. Like you said, Rob, Semien is still a better bat than what we've had at some points over the past few seasons in the bottom 3rd of our lineup too. So I'll take that upgrade right there. And Alvarez batting 8th. I think that Alvarez has the potential to move up, and I think that he is probably the one guy in this lineup that is the true difference maker to take this team to that next level. And that all starts with his health. I mean, it just seems like he's had a very tough time coming back from the multitude of injuries that he's had. And it's not easy. Listen, being a catcher, a young catcher, and doing both, playing great defense, and also producing to that level that we all thought he was going to come up and produce, given what he was, ranked in the Mets farm system and also just the MLB pipeline in general. it's a tough task to live up to. And we've seen the flashes of brilliance. We know that he can do it. It's just about the consistency and the health. So for right now, I'll put him in that, number 8 spot with the ability to move up. I think that you can make the switch even in the case for the switch of Marcus Semien and Francisco Alvarez and what I have right here, but I went with Alvarez at number 8. And I think that for the same reason you put Robert Jr. in the 9 spot, I think with what I saw from Carson Benge, the contact ability, bat to ball skills, just getting on base at a high clip is something that I'm confident that he can do. And he can also be that second leadoff hitter, so to speak, to flip the lineup over. I don't know what to expect from the power aspect of Carson Benge's bat. We didn't really see the long ball all that much from him in spring training. He's got true gap-to-gap ability. He's got actual, real power threat in his bat to the opposite field, which is very unique. I just don't know how many he's going to put over the fence. I'd probably have to estimate between 15 to 17. And I like him in that 9 spot. It takes pressure off. And if you can get on base at a high clip, you turn the lineup over to the big guys in the lineup in Lindor, Soto, and Bichette. And I know that this lineup, right, especially when you have, I guess, Polanco, Robert Jr.'s a righty, lefty, and you go 2 righties, 7, 8. Maybe you can split that up a little bit better. But I think matchups-wise, for me, a guy that doesn't really like lefty-righty, and that's not really my MO when I build my lineups because I could just care less about it. Guys are going to hit regardless if it's lefty-righty. I know that there's some guys that have historically good splits and it's a pattern with them, but other guys, they have good reverse splits too, and that's something that I have to take into consideration as well. So I like this lineup right here. Carson Benge is going to have a very bright future in a Mets uniform. But the thing that I want to leave you all with in this lineup, it's not about the order, because the order at the end of the day, I could care less about too. These guys, 1 through 9, have the talent. Bichette and Polanco, the difference between the lineup last year and the lineup this year is right there in the 3-4 spot. Bichette and Polanco, 2 of the best hitters in all of baseball last year with runners in scoring position. So like you said, power is great. This lineup, top to bottom, 1 through 9, has the ability, every single name, it's probably not going to happen, probably realistically, but they can all, and they have done so before, hit 20-plus home runs at some point in their career.
Yeah.
We don't need that per se. Soto's going to get his. He's going to hit 30-plus. I would have to guess Lindor's probably going to hit 30-plus. Polanco's coming off of a career high in home runs. He's going to get back to that. Who knows? Who cares? If these guys hit with runners in scoring position, which is something that the Mets offense struggled to do consistently last season, and adding Bichette and Polanco in the middle of your lineup with Lindor and Soto hopefully on base, that's going to make all the difference in the world. And that's going to take an 83-win lineup to be a 90-plus win lineup.
Yep.
And that's what I like. And that's the most underrated thing. Bichette was the biggest name, but for all the wrong reasons, right? A lot of people talk about, hits leader in the American League, multiple seasons, whatever. People worried about his defense. Okay, who cares? He hits his runners in scoring position. That's who I want in my 3 spot. I love the name Bo Bichette, and I hope that he's able to go ahead and prove it. Maybe he opts out. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But I'm hoping that he's going to be here for the long haul, and an extension at some point could maybe even work out. So I'm excited. I really am. And like I said, it was a very methodical approach from David Stearns, and it was very methodical what his pivot points were in free agency this offseason. It was very unique, and we'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, I'm glad you read my mind when it came to Bichette and Polanco. I was going to say that right after you were finished. Yeah, and that's a huge difference, right? How many times last year were we so frustrated? How many times you came on post-game shows and talk about how many runners did we leave on base? How many runners we left in scoring position? They did not score runs if they didn't hit home runs. Like, that was a huge problem for most of the year. For the most part, again, Pete Alonso had a really good year all around, but it was just the lineup, the whole lineup in general. Nobody can drive in runs without hitting a home run, and it was so frustrating. That is why it's so different this year, right? Lindor, again, he probably struggled in the beginning because that's his MO. Juan Soto is a guy that you want him, and I know I put Juan's Soto because that was kind of cool. There's got to be a typo. We just know this, Chris. We have to. It just has to be. So Bo Bichette and Polanco, like Chris just said, great clutch hitters. And Juan Soto, who we're okay with him taking walks when you got guys like that behind him. Not a big strikeout guy in Nimmo, big strikeout guy in Alonso who need to hit home runs to drive in runs. That was a problem. And continue down the lineup. So I love it. I think, I honestly think people are sleeping on the Mets lineup, to be quite honest with you. Again, a lot of things got to go right. We all know that. But you can say that for a lot of lineups. But I think a lot of teams or a lot of people are sleeping on the Mets lineup. But if you've seen Poly Market and all these other odds, the Mets have a high chance of making the playoffs and a high chance of winning the division, just based on pure common sense when it comes to the possible production from these guys. And you're right, Chris, about Alvarez. It's frustrating because I had a hard time figuring out where to put him, because in my mind I'm like, oh man, that potential is like a number 4 or 5 hitter, but the lack of performance puts him at the bottom of the lineup. And we've said it. All of us have said it. If Alvarez takes that next step and remains healthy and hits, I mean, you can take this lineup to the stratosphere. Like, there's no stopping this lineup at that point. I mean, you have 5 guys that can at the top, because Alvarez will clearly go up with the potential power if he hits. It's frustrating at this point, but got to keep him healthy. Why, as we talked about with the bench, why Luis Torrens is so important to this team, because you don't have to play Alvarez as much as you might need to early on in the season. I can see Luis Torrens playing 3 days a week, to be quite honest, just to keep Alvarez healthy. Maybe Alvarez DH from time to time, but get the bat in the lineup, but also not have him behind the plate and protect the legs and just protect him getting beat up. So I think Alvarez overall, even if he remains healthy, he's going to play less games because Luis Torrens is going to start more just to keep Alvarez healthy. I think the Mets are going to focus on that a lot. And when you got one of the best backup catchers in baseball in Torrens, why not do that?
That's also something that we didn't discuss when we were going over our bench, is that potential of Alvarez being a DH on multiple occasions, because I could definitely see that too. If his bat is off to a good start, but they want to keep, the legs fresh and keep him healthy and not take a beating back there, that's just another guy taking a spot that Mark Vientos would potentially take on some off occasions too. So it's going to be tricky. I think that Mark Vientos is at the biggest disadvantage, not to pile on him on this stream, but it's just it's clear as day going into this season that it's going to be an uphill battle for him to get consistent playing time, especially with the rest of the guys and the lineup maneuvers that we could possibly see moving forward. So, yeah, I'm excited for Carson Benge, man. Like I said, I don't think we'll see that true 20+ home run potential that I know he has in his bat in year 1. Maybe I'll be surprised and he does pull off that feat, but he doesn't need to, right? I think that bat to ball, the speed takes care of itself. How many infield hits did he have in spring training that we saw? I saw a lot from Carson Benge because he can utilize his legs. And when you're in that 9 spot, pressure's off. All you got to do is just be an on-base machine. Yep. Use the legs to your advantage, right? Nobody's going to care if you hit 15 home runs at the end of the season, as long as you're getting on base at a decent enough clip. And if he's scoring runs, right? I know a lot of people don't like to look at runs scored as a metric for, offensive players, because we're looking at probably the superstars and we care about their numbers. But bottom of the order guys, if they have a lot of runs scored in the season, that probably means they're getting on base for the guys at the top of the order. And that's what I want to see out of Carson Benge. So little bit of an old school thought there. Like I said, run scores is like an afterthought, I feel like, in today's day and age. But it's a true barometer of the OBP and getting on for your Lindors, Sotos, and Bichettes of the world. So I like it, man. This could be a very boom or bust lineup. I'm not going to lie. If things don't go the Mets' way, if Robert Jr. doesn't have a resurgence, right? If Alvarez does battle injuries again, and this is me being objective. This is not to scare anybody, because I think we're both high on this team. We'll see in our win totals here in just a second. Of course, how can you not be high when it's the start of the season for the New York Mets? And if you're a Mets fan, this is a story as old as time. But, just as there is a lot of boom potential here, there's a lot of bust potential, right? Robert Jr., is he going to get back to what he was in a White Sox uniform? Marcus Semion's only getting older. What is he going to do with his bat? Alvarez, is he going to stay healthy? Benge, is he going to live up to expectations as we all think he's going to? So all these are question marks. And is Lindor going to get off to a hot start for one time in his career? especially given the recent injury and the surgery that he had and coming back on a short span notice there to end spring training. So, but at the top of this lineups game, I like it, and I'll take it with a lot of other lineups in baseball. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I think we're both high in this lineup. The potential is probably, higher than we can even expect if things work out. And again, if everybody steps up and plays to their potential, it can make a huge difference. And maybe that's kind of unlikely, but you never know, right? Maybe we hit lightning in a bottle here, and David Stearns actually knows what he's doing, and I can look like a fool when it comes to David Stearns. And listen, I'd be happy to look like a fool. We need to win ball games. And speaking of winning ball games, I said in the chat, give us your win totals. There was a couple of 94s, 95s, 89s, and stuff like that. And Chris, we're gonna start with you. You're higher than me, but that's okay. Again, it's not negative. It's just for a fact, just to bring up everybody, because I know everybody's like, "Oh, Ron's gonna say 75 wins or anything like that." But no, Chris, win total. Talk about it, and then obviously, last but not least, after the win total, is talking about the NL East and their standing. So here you go, Chris. Your win total for 2026 is
94. I'm aiming big, man. I am. I like this team. Like I said, I was very interested to see how David Stearns was going to pivot. Now, obviously, what we have to work off of is spring training and this roster on paper in general. But like I said, especially with that 3-4 combo there and getting that true ace where this team faltered, they didn't have that anchor in the rotation to stop the bleeding. And Kodai Senga, as much as we kind of crapped on him in the beginning of this offseason because we were pissed off with how last season ended for him, not even appearing after going down in Florida, complaining of the heat, whatever, not coming back in that Miami Marlins series, whatever. First half of Kodai Senga last year was really good. It was really good. That's undeniable. And the wheels just fell apart with this team. And they were on pace to be well over 90 wins last season with the way the first half played out. Unfortunately, the second half was just disastrous. Everything that went wrong or could go wrong went wrong. So 94 is my win total. I think they'll take the NL East. I just haven't seen, and I guess we could talk about the NL East too. I'm not sure if you have the standings predictions up here either, but I just haven't seen really enough from the other teams to kind of be like, they're way beyond, above, and better than the Mets, right? The Braves are also dealing with Strider injury. Profar just got suspended for the whole 162, which is shocking, especially that deal that he signed, I think, at the beginning of last offseason. I know they're getting healthier. Acuna looks like a monster. He always does when he's healthy. They'll be in it. The Phillies will definitely be in it, of course, until they inevitably choke in the playoffs like they always do. But, I think that this is the year. Like and this is kind of a vibe feeling too, because like I said, it's boom or bust. This team is very boom or bust across all three facets of this roster. But I think that with really the roster turnover and Alonso's out of the equation, Nimmo's out of the equation, it doesn't seem like there's a competition for who's the leader in the clubhouse anymore. I don't foresee any clubhouse issues. I think this is a clean slate. I think everybody that's entered this organization with Bichette and Polanco, it seems like they're having a good time in spring training. Everybody's buddies. I like it, man. I like the vibe. I like what I'm feeling, and I like this roster on paper. I think the biggest question mark for me, beyond what we get in 3, 4, 5 of the rotation, because clearly I like what we have in Peralta and McLean up top, even though McLean's going to be going on day 3 instead of day 2, is a guy who also looked pretty good, but Devin Williams. What are we going to get out of him? The closer. What are we going to get in the back end of the bullpen with Weaver? Clearly, we have Rayleigh. Minter's not going to be ready to start the season. We'll see who the last bullpen candidate's going to be. But the bullpen is probably the biggest thing that I'll be very curious to watch because, last year it was the starting rotation was holding it down. The bullpen was great. The starting rotation fell apart, and the bullpen naturally fell apart. So if the rotation, with the addition of Peralta in year 2, McLean, we'll see what Kodai Senga can do with the 5-man rotation. If they hold up their end of the bargain, even missing probably arguably the best closer in baseball in Edwin Diaz now and replacing him with Devin Williams, can they hold their own consistently enough to close out ball games for a lineup that should be getting them a lot of leads? 94 wins. I think they take the NL East. Is that a bold prediction? Is that me just being a homer? Probably. Yeah, I'll probably admit it. Probably. But I like it. I like what I see. And I'm not going to discredit the Braves and the Phillies and what they have to offer this year. I'm not going to do it because I think that it's going to be a tight race until the very end. So I'll have the Phillies finishing second, 92 and 70. Braves third right there. I don't know, man. I could be wrong. We've been burned on this as Mets fans of the Braves. I'm going to give them 87 wins. Marlins, I don't know if they have enough. I don't know if they have enough, and the Nationals are going to be a bottom-dwelling team for probably a couple more years. So this is my NL East. It's up to interpretation, man. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. I know a lot of Mets fans are high on this team moving forward, as I am. But this same 94-win team can be another 83-win team if things fall apart. And if all of these things that we're talking about, you know, the ifs, the coulds, the shoulds don't translate into that, it could be another 83-win season. But I think the peak of this team, and if we get more consistency in the second half, I think it has the potential to be that 94-win team that I'm slating them as right now.
Yeah, there you go. 11 more wins than 2025 for Chris. Chris going big. He ain't going. He's going big. That's it. So Chris is loving it. And again, he talks about boomer bust, and I think it is. I think if they hit their heights, I think they can do what Chris is talking about. And again, he has them winning the division with 94 wins. I kind of agree with him when it comes to the 90 total. I got 91 wins for the New York Mets. I went a little bit lower. Again, I think what we've been saying about guys, you know, playing their potential or possibly better. I think there's going to be a little bit of flaw in certain guys that are not just going to pull their weight. And I think it's going to bring us down just a little bit, but not enough to crush the season. So I think 91 is more than enough to make the playoffs. I think this division is – people are giving way too much credit to the Braves or way too much, you know, hype to the Braves and the Phillies. I said this for a couple of years, and I'm on record saying this. The Phillies have been going downhill over the last 4 years. They've been getting lesser into the playoffs. They've been slowly just falling apart year by year. And I think this is the year they missed the playoffs. And listen, fuck them. To be quite honest with you, you know, I'm so sick of the Phillies. They became a thorn in our sides. I just can't stand them. You know, we shut them up in the playoffs as they thought they were the better team, even though they lost. You know, it sounds kind of familiar with certain players that are just freaking sore losers. But I think the Phillies are taking a huge step backwards. And to look at my NL East, I do think the Mets are going to win the division with 91 wins. I think the Braves are going to be a little bit better. I just think, you know, if they, for the most part, if their lineup remains healthy, and that was their big problem last year, was their lineup was tortured with injuries. And it just kind of put them by the wayside. Chris Sale getting hurt, everybody getting hurt, basically. I know Strider having issues right now and all that, but I just think their lineup is going to be very good. And I think it's still going to put them right where they need to be. I think they could be a fringe wild card team with the 90 wins. Again, depending on what the Central does, because there is a couple of good teams in there that can play for a wild card. I think the Phillies are going to miss the playoffs, to be quite honest with you. I think they are going to take a step back. They're kind of running it back. The same conversation that everybody had with the Yankees running it back this year. I think the Phillies are running it back this year. And with the potential of Wheeler, not knowing what you're going to get from him, I know Christopher Sanchez got that big deal that he just signed with the extension. He's going to be great. But other than that, I don't know about their rotation. I think their lineup is getting old. They're the same guys. You know, even their GM talked about Harper not being a superstar anymore. Schwarber, I think, is going to take a big step down when it comes to power. I really believe so. In that bandbox, he'll hit his probably 40 home runs, but I don't think he's going to hit 55 or something like that, crazy numbers. I think they're going to take a big step back, and I think they're going to miss the playoffs, be a third-place team in the NL East. The Marlins are going to be a thorn in everybody's side, like they always are. I think they're going to be over a 500 team. I think they always find young pitching. They always beat the Mets. They always beat the Phillies. They always beat the Braves. They find a way to beat teams in the NL East, which I think is going to get them over the hump, over 80 wins, 82 and 80. I think the Marlins are going to be a pain in the ass once again. Let's just hope that at the end of the year, they're not beating us to miss the playoffs. That's what we don't want again. And the Nationals, like you said, Chris, are bottom dwellers. They got a couple of years to be probably, you know, contending at all, let alone a division and playoffs. But Well, I'm excited about this team. Obviously, things have to go right with any team, but we know how Met fans are. We are Met fans. We know we have that one side, we have the devil and the angel on both sides on our shoulders, right? It's the devil saying, just wait until the shoe falls off the foot, something like that, where something is always going to go wrong. That is the LOL Mets, right? That is what we wait for. There's always a Met fan thinking anything goes wrong. Of course it does, but there's that one side where it's like, wow, this team is actually good. They're going somewhere. Then you get excited. Then you talk about the possibility of adding at the trade deadline. The Mets need to be going into a deadline with no question. They're getting additions at the deadline. I think this deadline is make or break for this team. How many years have we said on trade deadline shows, Chris? Do not half-ass deadlines. That is the worst thing you can do with a contending team, because it doesn't make your team believe in them. And you look like a fool when other teams that go further in the playoffs make the deals that you should have made, and then you're standing there with nothing except lost hope because you didn't do the job to fulfill this team and fill up this roster. This is a year, and again, the players have to do what they're supposed to do over the next couple of months to get to the trade deadline, where David Stearns he has to feel obligated to make a move. And, he can't be shy, just like he did this offseason, which I give him credit for. He actually traded top prospects to get players in here that can benefit this team. He can't be shy at the trade deadline. And there is untouchables, of course, but you can't let anybody stop you from getting that one piece that can put you over the top, Chris. And that can be the difference between 94 wins, like Chris said, or 91 wins, or hopefully not 83 wins. That could be a difference. And that is where we are right now. And I know a lot of people are giving a lot of different win totals, as my comments just froze. And I was trying to look at the win totals, but I seen a lot of people positive. There's nobody that's saying, 75 wins. So I think the positivity is going all around, Chris. So what do you think about my NL East? And, just anything you need to say in the broad terms of to start the season.
Yeah, the Braves, like I said, it's one of those things where the health has been a question mark there. I mean, Schwellenbach too. I'm not really sure if he's going to be ready. I'm not sure what he went down with, but he missed a chunk of last season for them, if I'm not mistaken too. I agree with you about the Phillies though, right? I mean, that's one team that is definitely trending downwards. They kind of ran it back. Who did they replace Ranger Suarez with? I know, Suarez left. Did they make a rotation addition?
I think they did. I don't think it was anybody spectacular, but I could be wrong. Like I totally just didn't care with them.
Like you characterized it, it's the Yankees of the NL. They're running it back. I don't think that's a good strategy for either of those clubs. The Yankees, I guess, are getting their main starters back, and that's kind of like the reasoning for why they decided to run it back overall. But it's just not a sound strategy. I'm happy the Mets didn't choose to go down that path. They could have, and David Stern said, hell no, we're not doing that. And I'm happy, because I think the Mets will be better for it, not only this season, but also in future seasons as well. So I think that, I don't care what happens in 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't care. As long as the Mets are on top. I don't need the wild card. Keep the wild card. I want the NL East division.
Yep.
Please. It is what it is at this point. 94 versus 91, whatever gets it done for me. I like what we have going on right now. Some of the depth within this system, not the farm system, but maybe more so of like the veteran depth in the minor leagues, maybe is a little bit shaky, right? We talked about Melendez before. I guess you have some bullpen veterans that are waiting. Kind of surprised that Kimbrel wasn't really like in the equation too, although he didn't really show me all that much in spring training, but it is what it is. I'm waiting for AJ Minter to get back, get off to a good start, and go out there and beat up on the good pitching. I think that this lineup has the ability to do so, and all eyes are on a few guys for me. But I think one is definitely Francisco Alvarez. That's one guy that I will definitely be watching on both sides of the baseball, defensively behind the plate as a battery unit, and also offensively trying to get to that strong point in his career and really take off. So that's it. I'm optimistic. We always are optimistic until something goes wrong, like you said, Rob, but let's not have that happen. And if it does happen, let's bounce back before it snowballs, just like it did last year.
Yep.
So let's go Mets. That's all I got. It was a fun stream. Good to be back. And opening day is just around the corner.
Yeah, and with the one other bullpen position that's available, I think Lovelady is gonna make the bullpen.
Of course, he can't ever go away.
David Stearns loves him. Like, how many times have we released him and brought him back? Like 5 times over the last year. So I think that's going to be the case. I don't think it's going to be long term, but I think it's just going to be the extra lefty just in case of anything. You got to eat up some innings, and again, wait for Minter to be back. Who I think could be back probably. I don't know what they haven't really gave a timetable, but I'm thinking about May, because even when I went to spring training, he was throwing hard in his bullpen sessions on the backfield. Like, he was really, I took a picture of him. He was shirtless, but he was throwing hard. Like, he was throwing a bullpen. Like, so he's been ramping up. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see him in May. I think they just want to get more innings out of him, just to make sure, he can get through a couple of games in a row without getting injured. And Minter would be huge. We know how much a pickup it was last year, and he got hurt. I think it was a big detriment to the bullpen last year. What happened? And speaking of the Phillies, we forgot about Jesus Luzardo. That's the guy that they extended. And Aaron Nola. So they got a really good top 3 with Christopher Sanchez. Obviously, Zach Wheeler is still out. If Zach Wheeler comes back to form, now they're talking about really 4 really damn good pitchers that, in their rotation, and Taiwan Walker is their 5th. So, yeah, their pitching can keep them in a lot of ball games. But I think, again, that offense is going to take a huge hit, in my opinion. But overall, we are excited. We are positive with this team. 94 wins, Chris, 91 for me. And it's just a matter of people stepping up and doing their jobs. Too many times this team over the years did not do their job, right? They just did not do what they were supposed to do. And it's frustrating. Now we will see if this new revamped roster can do the job. A lot of high hopes, a big season. We got Paul Skeens, Freddie Peralta on opening day on Thursday. I will be in attendance. I'll be freezing, of course, because why would it be nice in New York on opening day? But that's okay. We will have a pregame show. I'll probably be doing it from my car. And we'll just do what we got to do with the pregame. Hopefully connection is good, because, we always got problems when we get some streams sometimes, but it's always fun, guys. So, Chris, great to be back. I can't wait to start the pregame and postgame shows with you. We got great intros, great intros for pregame and postgame. It's going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully we're having a winning season, because that makes it even more fun doing pre and postgame shows. So have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets, and we'll see you next time. Pregame show opening day, guys. Good night.
Let's go Mets.